Hello world, I'm Hayley Solich, I'm your host, and this is the Gold Digger Podcast, where we're digging the dirt and finding the gold in people's lives. Grab a cuppa, sit back, relax and enjoy the show. Before we start digging for gold, I just want to acknowledge that I'm broadcasting from Wajak Noongar Budja here in sunny Perth and pay my respects to the traditional custodians of this land, both past and present. I want to acknowledge the connection to land, country and water and the beautiful family systems that exist within our Aboriginal people group. I want to share with you a quote from Josie Santee, the Every Girl. She says, "We know the difference between the penis and testicles, so it's about freaking time we all know the correct names of female anatomy as well." And I'm sure my next guest will be raring to expose the truth of that comment and add her take on it. And I'm going to leave her hanging for just a few more seconds, because first I want to tell you a story about a family. There were 5 daughters and they were standing at their mother's funeral. And my friend walked up to them and they began to have a conversation. My friend was curious as to the cause of the death of the mother. She had known them for much of her life. And the daughters quietly told her that the mother had died of vulval cancer. My friend was shocked. She asked them how long it was from diagnosis to her death. She was curious, as it was a family friend, and how long had they known? They said she never was diagnosed and she never told anybody. And how sad is that you could go and you could suffer through what would have been extremely painful end to your life because you're too ashamed to go and get some help. Sadly, this story happens every day somewhere in the world because of the shame and the stigma associated with gynecological health. And my next guest is about changing that, changing the whole platform for women when it comes to their health. And so I want to introduce her to you. I must confess, I'd not really given a thought to the female anatomy before I met our next guest. And as a mother of 4 children, I just put up and shut up and put out, so to speak. And having 4 children, I've certainly been asked many times, don't you know where babies are made? To which I have responded very quickly, of course I do. I am an expert in it. So if you are someone out there and you're looking at your gynecological health or you haven't considered it, I would say now's the time to open your ears. Kath Mazzella OAM, she is a multi-award winning, amazing gynecological and sexual health advocate, and she's taking it to the next level. And working with her has opened my eyes to a whole new world and vocabulary and what's important about that world and that vocabulary. And I'd never heard the word vulva before, and I was in my 40s when we met. She's an extraordinary human being, passionate, determined, kind of like a silky terrier. Once she just latches on, she won't let go until she has a result. And we love her for her determination. So, Kath, tell us a little bit about yourself.
30 years ago, allow me to be upfront and personal here, I had my clitoris, vulva and lymph glands removed due to cancer in a world that didn't know what a vulva was, or the stigma and the taboos were really, really challenging for me to be heard.
Wow. I mean, I'm crossing my legs just thinking about that. No, look, as somebody who has been recently diagnosed with lichen sclerosis, which is a vulval condition, I can really appreciate your journey, Kath, and the amazing work that you're doing. But before we get into all of that, I need to ask you what I ask every guest that comes on my show, and that is, can you choose an animal that best describes your personality and character, and let us know why?
Oh, well, probably a silky terrier, because I'm not very tall, and I'm just determined, and I will niggle in anywhere I can find that I can spread the word. So let's go for a silky terrier.
I love that. So next time you're out and about, Kath might be that one that's pissing on your leg or trying to hump you.
Stop it.
No, just joking. Okay, so look, that's fabulous. I guess you might want to know the animal you're being interviewed by today.
Yes, tell me, Hayley, tell me.
Well, before we came on to the show, I was saying to Kath, I think I'm feeling a bit like a sloth today. I think I'd rather be in bed. But I kind of feel like I'm a crow. I'm sitting up on the wires, checking out the world, squawking and making commentary on things, and probably being a bit irritating, pecking a little bit around here and there. So I think I'm going to be a big black bossy crow today.
Yes, well, I probably need a boss on top of me to get this moving, Hayley.
Yeah. So, Kath, you've had your own journey with your gynecological health. Do you want to tell us a little bit how that sort of played out for you?
Yeah, sure. After I had my clitoris, vulva and lymph glands removed, I discovered my daughter had polycystic ovaries and endometriosis. And I thought, what's going on here? Here I am without genitals. Here's my daughter suffering. Millions of women with these gynecological health conditions, but it's all done behind the closed doors. Quick, close the doors. Don't talk about it. Don't call it a vulva because you might offend people, but you can call it a vagina. And I thought, where is all this coming from? And I discovered the word pudendum. It's a Latin meaning. It says female genitalia, one who should and ought to be ashamed, the shameful part of a woman. So I'm questioning myself, should I be ashamed? Should my daughter be ashamed? And I just found it interesting that nobody seemed to want. I needed a connection. I saw the breast cancer women because my mum and two sisters had breast cancer, but I thought there was nothing there for me. And so I've discovered two other women that had vulval cancer and one had died. So I put an ad in the Woman's Day and all these ladies wrote me these horrific, horrible stories. But when I went to the health centres, it's like only experts can talk about these things. These ladies writing these stories, they should not be doing that. It's all, behind the closed doors. So it really drove me to sort of think, where is the power? Why do we as women lack the power? And why was it mostly male gynecologists at that point in time? So it just got my curiosity going that, if this happens to me, I don't want this to happen to your mother, sister or daughter. So let's make a noise about this. And in the meantime, over the years, I've seen other women dying. It doesn't have, I think it's only about 420 women a year have vulval cancer. But the women that die from this, it's a tragic way for any woman to die. And I didn't die. And I just feel as though it's my responsibility to speak out on behalf of those other women.
Yeah. And I think one of the complications, let's call it a complication of vulval cancer, is there's only really two ways to go: dead or losing part of your anatomy in a place that's so intimate and has long-term ramifications for you. I think you have to be very courageous and brave, I think, Kath, to go under the knife. Just the thought of it just makes me shiver.
Yeah.
So do you want to explain to our listeners, when you were faced with that reality and of having to make that choice, what was it, what was going through your mind at that time? Well, if you can say that without, bringing up too much emotion for you.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I remember I had 3 teenage children, sort of later teenagers, and I thought I just didn't want them to know. But as it turns out, they weren't happy that I'd kept this secret without sharing with them. And I sort of understand that now, but at that time I didn't want my children to be embarrassed or ashamed that their mothers actually had their genitals removed due to cancer. It was an unbelievable journey that, whichever way I went, the women's groups, the gynecologists, the medical profession, it's like you just don't fit in here. So much so that even the diagram that I was given, it had the ovary, cervix, uterus, vagina, and always the vulva was cut off. And I just couldn't get my head around, why do we do that? But I'm pleased to say that the New South Wales Cancer Council were the first one to help put a vulva diagram on their brochures, and consequently others have now joined and put a vulva on the diagram. But I do know that there's a a gynecological cancer research group in Australia that still do not have a vulva diagram, which I've tried so many times to say, please just include the vulva. But apparently they don't get funding for that, so therefore they don't put a vulva in there. And it just blows my mind to sort of think, in this day and age, why in the hell don't we put a vulva in there to include it? And somebody said, but the vulva is not part of reproductive health. Well, I tend to disagree with that, because the clitoris is in the vulva. It's not in the vagina, for those that don't know, but it also causes the stimulation of it in the vagina and through the sexual organs to perhaps, perhaps it's where all our pleasure is, but it also helps make babies as well. So the vulva is just as important as a penis and testicles.
So just to clarify for those that are listening that may not understand female anatomy, the vulva is the name given to the collection of organs that sit on the outside. So anything that you can see, it belongs to the vulva. And then what you can't see, which is the inside tunnel, that is the vagina. And so when we're running around calling our vulvas vaginas, when we're talking about everything down there, we're actually using wrong terminology. And I'll give you an example of how that could go really wrong. Is if I go and see my doctor and I've got thrush, for example, which usually is a condition that affects the vulva area rather than the vagina, and he says to me, go home and put this cream on your vagina, and I take it and I put it inside instead of on the outside, when it's actually only supposed to be used for external use, it could be very confusing and cause me to do the wrong treatment. And so wrong terminology can lead to confusion and wrong steps being taken. And I know that for doctors may be thinking that they're making it simpler for the female community, but as the quote says, we don't call a boy's testicles his penis, or his penis his testicles.
That would be crazy, wouldn't it?
It would be dumb. And so why are women's anatomy being treated differently? I just find it a curious thing. And obviously I have been working with Kath for a while, so I'm a bit indoctrinated with understanding, or educated, I should say, rather indoctrinated. I'm a bit aware. But this stigma that sits around the female anatomy and the embarrassment about talking about it, it's sad.
Well, I need to say there that I went to a women's health retreat recently, and there was a professional medical female speaking. And I asked the question, how can we get professionals to use correct terminology? She said, well, I tell my young daughter it's a vagina. And she said, when she's old enough, I'll tell her it's a vulva. And I just can't get my head around that. And even another lady who was treating me, she said that she told her mother she was treating a lady with vulval cancer, and she turned around and told the health professional that her grandmother had vulval cancer. She said, I would never have known. And so, a lot of people say, oh, it's not like that in this day and age, but trust me, it still is out there, and we need to make that change. So,
yeah, I agree with you, Kath. And, I think this is a conversation that needs to be had in the community. I know that Kath has been beating this drum for 20, 25, 30
years.
Going on 30 years. Gosh, that tells you how long we've known each other. It's probably half of that time. And I know that it's been a wearying message, because it seems to be taking a long time to come through into change in our society. So I want to just help Kath out here by encouraging you, if you're out there in the community, to start to use the word vulva. It's not a big shift. Just call it what it is.
Can I just say, sorry, Hayley, there is a great way that perhaps you can help out in the community. I'm an ambassador for the Australian Gynaecological Cancer Foundation, and after 30 years, I'm really pleased to say that one of their campaigns is vulval awareness. So they've got vulva socks. So if you go to the Australian Gynaecological Cancer Foundation, you can purchase these vulva socks. And I'm told that a hospital who are celebrating the Gynae Awareness Day they've just ordered their stocks for their staff, for the doctors and the nurses, to wear these vulva socks. And I I'm going along to what's for the photo shoot for that. And I just can't wait for that to happen, because it's a great way for you to purchase these socks and wear them to your workplace and then start the conversation. So, if you're brave enough to do that, that is.
Yeah, and I think, look, I just think it's a conversation. And I'll give you an example for our listeners. I have 3 daughters, and 2 of my daughters have the symptoms of PCOS, which is a polycystic ovarian syndrome, and that affects them lots of ways. It causes heavy bleeding, bloating, hair growth, weight,
mental issues,
mental health, mood swings and things, and it does affect them quite a lot. And so, because they've grown up with Kath around, when they became young teenagers, they have had such a boldness to go and speak to their doctor about everything. They've had such a boldness to take control of their sexual health and to be very forthright in asking for what they need. Would they have had such a boldness if Kath was not in our life? I don't think so, because I didn't have a boldness. And so when I was starting to have symptoms of lichen sclerosis, I was able to first know what it was pretty quickly, and secondly, to go to my doctor and to ask my doctor for a referral to the gynecologist I wanted to see, because I knew that gynecologist because we were writing a book together. So it was like, because of this awareness, I had a pathway. I had a pathway of treatment that was quick and effective. And I think that's part of this understanding is knowledge is power. And I've learned that from Kath, that knowledge is power. And when we have the knowledge of our anatomy, we have the knowledge of what can go wrong with our anatomy, and we're enabled to have a voice in the system and to feel the power of having a voice, then we can get what we need. And we can be confident to ask for what we need in the health system. And for too long, I think women have just taken what comes to their table and been grateful for what little scrap they get from systems and from people and from life. But it is time for us to be better informed and more aware, so we can actually be confident to ask for what we need. And you can't ask what you need if you don't know what's wrong with you, and you don't know
the terminology,
and you're afraid.
I just wanted to talk about Kayla Newland, who died about 6 to 12 months ago, and she was 23 years of age, and she brought her marriage forward before she died. And it was a very sad situation, and I'm dealing with her mother at the moment, and we're going to have a Vulval Awareness Day for the Gynae Awareness Day in September the 10th. And it's really great to be able to give support to the mother and the father and the family, because I see the families after this, the aftermath, and it's just not acceptable that we just think, oh, well, there's only 430 in Australia. But I believe, Hayley, that, with your lichen sclerosis, if we don't deal with it, I'm told, if we don't deal with it properly by experts, well, then sometimes it can lead to cancer. So we can help progress with the research and with the support. And I know the breast cancer women have specialised breast cancer nurses. Yeah. Well, let's try and lobby to have some vulva cancer nurses, that specifically can understand the depth of this. It's unbelievable what women go through.
Look, I agree. And you only have to go on to, I'll call it LS, lichen sclerosis, LS. You only have to go onto a LS support group on Facebook, and you read the terrible stories of women suffering and their search for answers and clues to how to manage what's going on in their bodies. And I think, our bodies are our friend until they're not. We can look after our bodies, do all the right things, but then there's no given that we're not going to be confronted with an issue. As I said, when I met Kath, I was in prime of health and I didn't have any issues, and certainly not in the gynecological areas. And I remember thinking to myself all the time, I was, listening to Kath and watching her lie down while we were working together, because she had to take breaks because of her body condition. I just remember thinking, why is Kath in my life? Why is Kath in my life? Why is Kath in my life? I am not having vulvar cancer. I remember having these conversations with God saying, I'm not having vulvar cancer, but I do have lichen sclerosis. And I went, that's why Kath's in my life, because she has come so that I might be well managed. And I was quick to respond, and I have not had the journey that some of the women that I have read their stories are having. So I'm very grateful that I was able to have quick intervention, Kath.
I was the Jean Howe's Women's Health Champion last year, and on their website it states that 1 in 80 women, 80 women, have lichen sclerosis. That is a lot of women, and yet there's no research. I just don't understand why this is so, but we as women have to stand up. And even when it's a Vulval Awareness Day, if you don't have a condition, we've got a flyer that you send out to your networks and say, hey, look what's happening out there, just to open up the conversations.
And I think that's 1 in 80 that are diagnosed and talking about it.
Well, that's right.
I think if you actually went out and really were able to look inside every household and look inside a woman's body in every household, you might find that the stats are quite a bit higher because it is a condition that can be confused for a lot of different things, I think.
But I think we need to add a bit more fun. You sort of think, you can't have fun with lichen sclerosis or gynecology, but we need to have sort of music and fun and more entertainment to break down some of those barriers and stigmas. So, and I believe I have heard an organisation, because I've got a knickers campaign. We do cardboard cutout knickers, and also we knit up knickers and make banners out of them. Well, I'm told that there's going to be a bus down south, and they're going to be encouraging the rural areas to knit up the knickers and things like that. Well, that's a fantastic way to be able to bring the community together, open up the conversations, and then they can educate at the same time.
Yeah, no, look, I think that's tremendous to get out and do some community engagement. And I think the other side of the coin, because we're talking pretty deep and dark gynaecological conditions. But the other side of the coin is to have respect for and really value our sexual and reproductive and other parts of our gynecology, because it's not all about having babies.
No, it's not.
But it's not all about having sex either.
No. But while on that topic, Hayley, where are the men in the picture? The men are, in the background, and I know that my husband, he didn't have any idea what was happening, and it just tipped our whole life upside down. But 18 months after my operation, Tony had 5 bypasses, so his heart was broken, but he didn't have the resources to be able to, to reach out or speak to somebody else. So there's so much work to be done in this area.
Yeah, there is. We're just going to take a 5-minute break, and then we'll be back to talk more about the upside of your gynecology. So stick with us.
Voices going round in my head. I don't believe them. Don't believe what they said. It's calling, someone help me to find my way. Just can't keep moving with missing pieces of my soul. Nothing feels like it used to anymore. Mom told me who I need to be. Darkness consumes me, it consumes me. I just can't find who I need to be. Just can't keep moving with missing pieces of my soul. Nothing
listening to the Gold Digger podcast. I'm Hayley Solich and I'm here with Kath Mazzella OAM, and we're talking all things down and dirty in the vulva area. And I said before we went to break that we're going to come back and talk about the positive upside of having gynecology. And then on break, Kath told me, what is there positive about having gynecology? Apart from pushing out babies and the sexual pleasure that one can feel in the 80,000 plus nerve endings that are in the vulva.
But I think this is where the music and the drama and documentaries are going to bring it out in a fun sort of manner. But it's only up to the experts to be able to do that, because I did have a not-for-profit GAIN, Gynaecological Awareness Information Network, and we had a great gynae debate, and it was the most funniest thing to see these health professionals, gynecologists and a sexologist on the stage and making fun out of something that's so serious. But the audience just felt like they were at home because we're all here together with the professionals and they were making fun of it. And it was a really funny show. I'd love to see another great gynae debate, even in Parliament House in Canberra. I might write that down. So I'll.
Can you imagine what it would be like if sex was not a dirty word?
Yeah.
If we were to remove all the stigma that sits around your anatomy and normalize sexual function and normalize body function, and I think it would be liberating. I'm curious, Kathy. I know that from your research that you did, that you found a Latin word that sort of put the spin on why the vulva has been so stigmatized, historically speaking. Do you want to share that?
Yes. Well, when looking through the research, I didn't know what I was doing. I discovered the Latin word pudendum, and which states female genitalia, one who should and ought to be ashamed, the shameful part of a woman. So, I thought, whoa, am I supposed to be ashamed? Why am I ashamed? And this is why I got all these questions. I think, why do women treat me like this? Why do the gynecologists have so much power? So that really was I don't know what the word is, Hayley. It's sort of
lightning?
Yeah, a lightning moment to sort of think, wow, that's why. And this all goes back hundreds of years or even thousands of years. So for me to try and do that in 30 years, it's wishful thinking. But there are changes that are happening, but I'm hoping to have it at the United Nations level to try and sort of get them to address it, because a lot of these things are put under reproductive health.
Yes.
And to me, the word reproductive sounds like babies and abortion and contraception, whereas gynecology, the list is long and the numbers are long as well. So we've got to try and tackle with that and get some more. And I noticed the millions and millions of dollars that are given to the footballers overseas. I don't know how much they get here, but I wish we could. There's a lot of funding or money that is contributed to breast cancer through a lot of the men's sports as well. And I'm thinking, well, why can't we do that with some of the female sports too, and send it off for the research for the vulva?
Yeah. So I guess what's missing is the question. What's missing in society that is supporting that old thinking space that women ought to be ashamed of themselves, that they should be ashamed of their bodies in any way, shape or form? What is missing in the psyche of our society that we would treat women in that way? And I think we have made big strides. I know that from your story, Kath, that when you were first diagnosed with having some abnormal cells, that you weren't even told what caused that.
No.
Your husband was, but you weren't even informed. Do you want to just sort of share that story?
Oh, yes. I discovered I had human papillomavirus, which they hadn't had the vaccination at that point, but I think they were working on that.
Well, my guest got all choked up with emotion talking about this topic. I guess it cuts deep, doesn't it, Kath?
Yeah, well, it does. Even after 30 years, it's still there, because I still get frustrated to sort of think, how can we convince women and men of how we can progress further? But we have got a great way of doing this is the Assistant Health Minister of Australia. She has a media release out recently about Jed Kenny, about women sharing their gynecological health stories. But it's without, I've got 10 awards. Without action from those awards, nothing changes. And it's like this Jed Carney putting the media release. It's like, okay, well, let's get these stories, let's put it out there, and then we can claim some more funding and research. So it's really, really important. But to do that, to encourage these women to speak out, we need more open forums like you and I are speaking.
Yes.
And it's just getting the message out, getting it out over and over again. But it's also asking the corporates and women in business to sort of be more open about these topics. So
so probably to paraphrase that, if you are out there and you're a woman, we want you to sign your name in blood with your, metaphorically speaking, with your story and send it on into the government. Imagine if there were 100 women's vulva stories that landed on their desk, then they have to go, well, maybe there's something here we need to look at. The more stories, the more attention that it's going to get to this, I would say, critical health issue in our community. So I'm going to wrap it up and ask Kath to give you her most important message that she would like to get out to the community about gynecological and sexual health awareness.
Well, the most important thing is we've established the International Gynaecological Awareness Day, and it is through that day and through the vulva socks that you will be able to empower yourself. And I want you to feel when you do empower others, it's like, wow, I've made a difference in the world. And because the knowledge is power, and if you gain your knowledge and then share it with others, well, I think that's the really important point, because we've got to be more exposed what's going on out there.
So you'd like people to get engaged in the International Gynaecological Awareness Day on the 10th of September to celebrate it in their corner of the world?
Absolutely. And the knickers, you do cardboard cutout knickers and just decorate it and just put Happy Gynae Awareness Day, or whatever your issue you'd like to bring a point out. Write it on your knickers, and just the cardboard knickers, and take it to work, hang it in your workplace, ask if you can do that, because it just does create the conversations.
Yes, that's right. And it is about gaining awareness and creating a more open community to be able to talk about these things. So just encourage you to pop over to Kath's website, kathmazzella.com. It's all going on her website. You'll be able to find out about the International Gynae Awareness Day there, and there's a bit of a kit you can download to get more information. And if you want, there'll also be a post on her website about that consultation with the government, and if you want to get engaged in that, I really encourage you to click through and put a submission in. You don't have to go into like extreme detail, just the bare facts of what's sort of happened for you, and maybe a little bit of an idea of how that's impacted your life. And if you've got some solutions, government is always open to solutions. And
closing.
And we are going to close in just a moment. I haven't quite finished, Kath.
Sorry, Hayley.
She's trying to give me the wrap up here. I have to tell you, she is bossy. I've worked with her for a while. Don't cross her. She's very bossy. But so Kath's website, kathmazzella.com. On her website, you'll be able to go to the International Gynae Awareness Day, IGAD, is it what it's known as for short, for 2023, and find out what's going on. Download a kit, and you can register your event with Kath and share the love with some photos after the event, so that she can then create a wave of interest in getting this awareness out into the community. Thank you for listening today. This is the Gold Digger Podcast. I'm Hayley Solich. We've been talking with Kath Mazzella OAM, a wonderful gynae and sexual health awareness campaigner. And Kath has one last word to say to you.
Viva la vulva to you all.
Thank you, Kath. We'll catch you next time. Bye for now. You've been listening to the Gold Digger Podcast. I'm Hayley Solich, your host, and we've been interviewing Kath Mazzella OAM. If you've enjoyed today's podcast, please like, share, comment and follow. We look forward to seeing you soon. Bye for now.